that, again, from what we saw last year, the progression that we thought was going to happen, it wasn't quite that. It wasn't quite as as immediate. It wasn't quite as felt. You saw a player who was playing next to Declan Rice. Okay, let's talk about one of my favorite players. Let's talk about a player who is a fan favorite to a lot of United fans. Someone who I feel like most United fans see a long career at Manchester United, and that's Kobbie Mainoo. And before we even get into the main topics, I just want to start this video by saying that Kobbie Mainoo is a very young player, and a lot of the things I'm going to talk about and a lot of questions that are around Kobbie, they're not new questions, and they're not things that other young players haven't gone through. Now, there are some parts that are quite unique to Kobbie Mainoo, and we're going to discuss those because those are the tricky bits that are unique to Kobbie Mainoo, that are unique to United, that are unique to Ruben Amorim, the way this team is set up, and what the expectations are for next season. But a lot of the questions we have here about Kobbie, they're questions that people have had about Kevin De Bruyne, about Mohamed Salah, about Luka Modric, about players that went on to be amazing players. Let's not forget the fact that Modric at one point was considered to be the worst signing of the summer when he first joined Real Madrid. Let's not forget the fact that Mourinho, as great of a manager as he was, there was a point where he had to let go of Kevin De Bruyne because he just didn't fit that team. Now, I don't think that we're in that same space for Kobbie Mainoo, mainly because I feel like this United team definitely need a player of Mainoo's quality, but the point still remains. When you're a young player, there is usually a lot of uncertainty around you. And the first talking point, and I feel like this is kind of what sprouts this whole conversation, is the fact that Mainoo went from, playing in the final, from being part, especially in the latter stages of the Euro last year, being a key part of the English national team, of scoring in the FA Cup final for United. He reached another level next year. To this year, when you compare things, is a bit lackluster. So a lot of the questions around Kobbie Mainoo have been around that, the fact that he hit such high ceilings last season, and this year it's not been quite the same. There are, of course, the muscle injuries he dealt with throughout the season, which put him which sidelined him for quite a long time. But there are also things in his game that have been lackluster, at least lackluster in the sense that, again, from what we saw last year, the progression that we thought was going to happen, it wasn't quite that. It wasn't quite as as immediate. It wasn't quite as felt. You saw a player who was playing next to Declan Rice. You saw a player who was playing behind Bruno Fernandes, who was able to do some special things, who was playing well beyond his years. And I still feel like Mainoo still has that in his game, but it has definitely been a step backwards, at least in my opinion, this season. And again, the muscle injuries has a lot to do with it. But another thing that has a lot to do with it is something that I first started to talk about when I first made this channel, and it was around the Rashford, Ranić conversation. If you've been following me for quite a while, you know that I like to talk about Rashford quite a lot, because that's those used to be one of my first videos, and I feel like a lot of that situation translates here, and it translates in the sense that Kobbie Mainoo is a player who is developing, as we saw how amazing he was last year, and he didn't have that solid base. He didn't have the solid base that a young player should have. You look at, for example, Lamine Yamal. Lamine Yamal is an amazing player, but he's also benefited from playing in a system and an amazing manager on an amazing team for both his national team and for both Barcelona. When you have a great talent and you have the right platform for him to develop, great things usually happen. But the opposite also happens when you have a great talent, a great young player in Kobbie Mainoo, but then you have a very unstable platform in Manchester United. And me calling it unstable is really me putting it lightly, because what's going on at Manchester United, what happened this season, was horrendous. United just had their worst season in Premier League history. So for us to ask a young player to come through and step up for a team like this is asking quite a lot. So the point is, the third point I'm trying to make here is that Kobbie Mainoo is a young player who needs to develop. Again, we're talking about that progression from year 1 to year 2, But at the same time, you look at the team, you look at the fact that the man that gave him a lot of confidence, the man that was talking about him so positively in interviews, the man that started him in a lot of those games, the man that was patient with him even when he had his injury at the start of the season, in Erik ten Hag, was fired. The fact that a lot of the other attacking players on this team were underperforming, the fact that Onana dropped points in a lot of games, the fact that this defense was just lackluster, the fact that Ruben Amorim got a lot of things wrong tactically throughout the season. There are a lot of things that Kobbie Mainoo just had to deal with. Aside from just trying to focus on your football, you're also trying to focus on a team that's just completely underperforming. Now, moving on to some more technical things about Kobbie Mainoo's games, and is the fact that we have seen some, some physical attributes that Kobbie Mainoo can improve on, and we've seen this already in some of his, social media posts and etc. Him training with Lenny Euro, him training on his own, and I feel like, again, this is one of those problems that is kind of the same for every young player. To mind, just very quickly, comes Cristiano Ronaldo. When Ronaldo first came to United, he was a very fragile player. It took Ronaldo quite a few years to become the dominant machine he would go on to be. You look at Ronaldo in 2008, and you look at Ronaldo just 3 years before that in 2005, they're two completely different human beings. In 2008, Ronaldo was one of the greatest athletes in the world. Not just in terms of football, Ronaldo was one of the greatest athletes in the world. Someone who prepared his body for the exact position he played and for the type of challenges and opposition he was going to face. But it took Ronaldo 3 years to get to that stage. We're talking about Mainoo in less than 12 months to try and make that jump. That's quite a lot to ask. But nonetheless, there were a lot of inefficiencies in Mainoo's game, mainly stemming from him not being quite strong enough in some of those midfield battles. Kobbie Mainoo not having that quickness in the midfield. But again, I believe all of these things will improve, and the fact that Kobbie Mainoo is already working on these things is kind of like just ticking the box. But that's definitely one of the things I want to talk about, the fact that Mainoo physically throughout the season wasn't quite there, and again, the muscle injuries also come into play, but that's definitely a factor. And again, the caveat that I made at the start of the video, this is something that happens to a lot of young players, not just Kobbie Mainoo, but a lot of young players in general. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that some people are talking about possible transfers for Kobbie Mainoo, which is kind of weird to me. There are a lot of players that we need to ship off, a lot of deadwood we need to get rid of in this team. Kobbie Mainoo is probably at the bottom of that list. The last player on that list would be Bruno Fernandes, someone who we really need to try and keep hold of. Kobbie Mainoo is around that tier. He's around the tier of players that we need to keep a hold of, and we cannot let go. This is a player, again, who I believe that within 3 years will be one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. He's already reaching that level, but within 3 years, you can kind of bet good money on that Kobbie Mainoo will be one of the better midfielders in the Premier League. So for us to want to get rid of that so early is silly. And the people that are kind of, supplementing or even giving attention to those conversations, that's just a bit weird to me. When you have a young player in Kobbie Mainoo, someone who you can build on. You look at the young pillars in this team, the Amad Diallos, the Kobbie Mainoos, the Lenny Euros, the players that can go on to build something special in this club. Those are the players you keep a hold of. But anyways, guys, I appreciate you watching this video to the end. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, share, do all these things to please help me grow this channel. I appreciate you watching to the end, and as per usual, I'll see you soon.